Hi, welcome to Fuel for Fathers. I'm Peter, and today we're diving into why coffee stops working after lunch. You've had your morning coffee, maybe two, and it works perfectly. You're alert, focused, getting through the morning shift. Then you have lunch, grab another coffee around 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. and nothing. It's like drinking hot water, you're still tired, still foggy, and you're wondering what the hell happened. Here's what's actually going on. It's not that the coffee stopped working, it's that your adenosine receptors are saturated, your cortisol rhythm is shifting, and your body's building up a tolerance faster than you think. Let me break down the science here. When you wake up in the morning, you've got adenosine that's been building up in your brain all night. Adenosine is a chemical byproduct of your brain using energy. The longer you're awake, the more adenosine accumulates, and it makes you feel tired by binding to receptors in your brain. Caffeine works by blocking those adenosine receptors. It doesn't give you energy, it just stops you from feeling tired. When you have your first coffee of the day, caffeine molecules rush in and occupy those receptors before adenosine can get to them. That's why you feel more alert. The tiredness signal is being blocked. But here's the problem. Adenosine doesn't disappear just because caffeine is blocking the receptors. It keeps building up in the background all morning. You're awake, you're working, your brain is burning energy, and adenosine levels keep climbing. So by lunchtime, you've got a massive backlog of adenosine floating around, just waiting for those receptors to open up. And when you have another coffee at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., you're trying to block receptors that are already overwhelmed. Like, there's so much adenosine built up that caffeine can't keep up. Some of it gets through, and you start feeling that tiredness breaking through the blockade. That's why the afternoon coffee doesn't hit the same way the morning one did. There's also your cortisol rhythm. Cortisol is your body's natural alertness hormone, and it follows a daily pattern. It peaks in the morning, usually within 30 to 60 minutes after you wake up. That's why you naturally start to feel more alert even before you've had coffee. Throughout the morning, cortisol stays relatively elevated, which is why your first coffee works so well. You're pairing caffeine with already high cortisol levels. But after lunch, your cortisol starts to dip. It's a natural part of your circadian rhythm. Between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., most people experience a cortisol drop, and that's the same time you're trying to use coffee to stay alert. So you're fighting against two things at once. Adenosine is breaking through, and cortisol is dropping. Caffeine alone can't compensate for both of those shifts. Then there's tolerance. Most blokes don't realize how fast your body adapts to caffeine. If you're drinking coffee every single day, multiple times a day, your brain starts producing more adenosine receptors to compensate. It's trying to restore balance. So over time, you need more caffeine to block the same number of receptors. That first coffee in the morning still works because you've had a break overnight. But by the afternoon, you're already pushing against that tolerance, and the effect is weaker. And if you've been smashing coffee all morning, you're also dealing with caffeine's half-life. Caffeine stays in your system for hours. The half-life is about 5 to 6 hours, which means if you had a coffee at 8 a.m., half of that caffeine is still in your bloodstream at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. When you add more caffeine on top of that, you're not starting fresh. You're topping up a system that's already partially saturated. Your body can only process so much at once. Most blokes think the solution is just to drink more coffee or switch to something stronger. But that's not fixing the problem. It's just pushing harder against a wall. You're not addressing the underlying adenosine buildup, the cortisol drop, or the tolerance you've developed. Here's the thing. Coffee is a tool, but it's not an energy source. It's a blocker. And if you're relying on it to mask tiredness all day long, you're fighting a losing battle by the afternoon. So what can you actually do about it? First, time your coffee strategically. Instead of spreading it out all day, concentrate your caffeine intake in the morning when cortisol is naturally high and adenosine levels are still manageable. Have your first coffee 60 to 90 minutes after you wake up, not immediately. That's when your cortisol is starting to dip from its morning peak, and caffeine will actually complement your natural rhythm instead of fighting it. If you need a second coffee, have it mid-morning, maybe around 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. But after that, consider cutting it off. I know that sounds brutal, but if your afternoon coffee isn't working anyway, you're just adding caffeine to your system that's going to mess with your sleep later without giving you the boost you're looking for. Second, address the adenosine buildup. The only real way to clear adenosine is sleep. If you're only getting 5 or 6 hours a night, you're starting every day with elevated adenosine levels, and by afternoon, you're completely overloaded. Even 1 extra hour of sleep can make a noticeable difference in how effective your coffee is throughout the day. Third, manage your post-lunch energy dip differently. Instead of relying on coffee to fight your circadian rhythm, work with it. If you can, take a 10 or 15-minute break around 2 p.m. Close your eyes, let your body have that rest it's asking for. You'll come out of it sharper than if you'd tried to caffeinate through it. And if your job doesn't allow for a break, at least switch tasks, move from something mentally demanding to something more physical, or vice versa. Give your brain a different kind of stimulus. Fourth, watch what you're eating at lunch. A big carb-heavy meal spikes your insulin, which makes you drowsy. If you're trying to use coffee to fight off a food coma, it's not going to work. Go for protein and fats at lunch. Chicken, steak, eggs, vegetables. Keep your blood sugar stable, and you won't need as much caffeine to prop yourself up in the afternoon. And if you're really dependent on caffeine, consider cycling off it occasionally. Even just a few days without coffee can reset your tolerance. Yeah, you'll feel rough for the first day or two, but your receptors will downregulate, and when you go back to coffee, it'll actually work again. You don't have to quit forever. Just take a break every few weeks to reset the system. Bottom line, coffee stops working after lunch because your adenosine is overwhelming the receptors, your cortisol is dropping, and you've built up tolerance throughout the morning. Adding more caffeine isn't the answer. Managing when you drink it, how much sleep you're getting, and what you're eating at lunch. Okay, those are the levers that actually make a difference. You're not broken, and the coffee isn't fake. Your body's just doing what it does when you're trying to use a stimulant to override natural rhythms all day long. Thanks to Father Fuel for sponsoring us, giving fathers energy when it matters most.